Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. It's Shirley with Spirit of Matter, and we have this horror of a T square in the sky where Mars and Jupiter are squaring Saturn and Venus. If that's not enough, so the moon is applying to conjunct Pluto, which means our entire emotional and psychological state is about to be composted, disintegrated, and it might feel like we are literally dying in a couple hours. But this is a very transient, it's a very transient time. It is Saturn Day, and the hour, for the hour, yes, I forgot. Oh, the hour of Jupiter. So, and Mercury is retrograde. And I think that this is a great time where we want to escape somewhere. So I would like to talk about the reality of escapism and the structures within where we escape to, and the reality of Saturn and Neptune within our composites and synastries. Because Saturn and Neptune have been celebrated mundanely. Okay, this is the breaking of a dream, but it's also the dissolution of the communist era, the dissolution of USSR, are all connected with Saturn-Neptune cycles. There are astrologers who deal with that mundanely, and you can see it in abundance on the web. But little has been spoken about Saturn and Neptune in our own personal lives. And so Neptune is everything that Saturn isn't. Saturn is structure, Neptune is abstract. Saturn is being on time, Neptune is playing with time, or having the sense of time being malleable. Okay. Saturn is death, Neptune is the afterlife, the mediumship, the near-death experience, where something is more alive when it's dead. Okay, that's pretty much the Neptune perception. Saturn is a reality check. Neptune is a reality check to reality, because without dreams there is no reality. You would not sustain without dreaming. Saturn is our ancestors. Neptune is reminding us that our bloodlines are only a small portion of our ancestry. In the world of reincarnation, who wouldn't know? And so Saturn is dedication to something, Neptune is surrendering something. So when you bring these two together, okay, the pragmatic, the realistic, the dedication, the deadline, and the dream, the creativity, the place you escape to, they have a very interesting dynamic, which could both reincarnate dreams. Okay, if you think about fairy tales, somebody has to write them, somebody has to make a movie, but also the grim reality of our fairy tales. When you think about Alice in Wonderland programming for the MK Ultra versus Alice in Wonderland, okay, just a book that everybody read, and what we escaped to was actually a modality that was used to enslave people, particularly. Okay, New World Order. Okay, so this is just one example. Now in our relationships, let's begin with the hard aspect. Begin with the conjunction. And the conjunction is a blending of realities. Okay, Neptune, and this is very interesting, because Neptune might believe it is bringing the dream, the spiritual view, the all-encompassing something, and Saturn is the builder. Okay, Saturn is what you need to either build the dream, or is the reality check, is the breaking of the dream. Okay, but Neptune also brings the dream to Saturn, and so Saturn might act on a vision that is different from the Neptune person. So someone might be experiencing the breaking of a dream, whereas also the building of a dream. This is where Saturn may believe that its limitations are suddenly imaginary, and there is a boundaries dissolution, which may or may not be realistic. Whereas the Neptune might feel that they have found someone who, although maybe critical or putting delays, or even it's kind of like you enter a dream state and you meet the same father you escaped into this, like, oh, let's take all these drugs and have a psychedelic experience, and then you have a mushroom that looks like your dad and begins to criticize you. So even in the dream state, you escape into someone who's actually trying to incarnate your dreams, and they have something to say. They have editing notes. They have, well, this is not realistic, but we can do it like that, or and that can create a reality where one person feels the other is kind of like a creator and editor kind of relationship. Okay. Whereas it really is difficult to tell which is which because they blend so beautifully. And so Neptune takes on the Saturnian vibe, and then Saturn, okay, where the fears dissolve, the boundary dissolves, can take a Neptunian side. So this is, as you can see, a very challenging aspect, hard aspect to have, but it can yield both the breaking of a dream and the building of a dream. With Neptune, you have to surrender something, and there is something that you want to manifest there. And so there is always a sense of miraculousness as to how things happen or how things manifest. There can be a deep depression, okay, which is important. Saturn can be depressive. And Neptune just take it to mythical depression. Okay, they can be mythical depression. But there can also be states of elation that are totally vivid and totally real and have been long planned and even programmed. So Neptune also rules dissociation, the playing with time, and all of these events. Spying, tales, actual spying is very possible here. Actual programming, unfortunately, is also very possible here, but also painting, creation, movie making, realizing something that its karma is to manifest as a creative, artistic endeavor. And there's something where both people simply have to surrender into the creative forces within, because those things just manifest. Okay, I had Neptune to my Saturn with actually the person that was offender towards me during the Me Too era. And what came out was first Sugar-Free Lemonade, which was a satire, was totally compulsory. Okay, and then 7th October would come Flying Bombardier, where I was tortured, but also for all the things that they couldn't talk about, I made satire out of, which basically creates a tremendous dependency where your role as intelligence person is one thing, and maybe to assassinate me, maybe I don't know, and then but you're also dependent because the soul wants to break the secrecy and you need a whistleblower, which I am. And so you have to remember that in our age, where Pluto Neptune sextile, it means that if Saturn is conjunct in Neptune, it very likely either sextiles Pluto, okay, or for the other, no, if conjunct Neptune is very likely sextile Pluto, okay. If conjunct Pluto, very likely sextile Neptune, okay. And so with the conjunction, there is one blending of realities, and then there is the sextile with Pluto, and you want to watch my Pluto Saturn hard aspects video, where I go into the many ways that they can blend, because you need it, one cannot go without the other when it comes to this type of content. Okay, and I addressed this in also several other videos where there is just a feature about harmonious aspect, that everything meets them with the hard aspect involved. and the more harmonious, like the bisextile that's perfecting with Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, it does mean that there's always going to be that. Okay, it's always you three, that kind of thing. Then another thing to remember about Neptune Saturn is indeed that tremendous dependency. Okay, where it's almost addictive, but it's not because of addiction necessarily. It can be. It can also break addiction. Okay, because Saturn, Neptune, break dissolution of something can be dissolution of addiction, but it's so because of tremendous dependency. Think about a person who's completely isolated, completely in a state where they literally have no one to speak about these things, and then the ability to, through the dream state or through programming, transmute their loneliness to the very same person that is the reality check on the dream, that he can actually do something creative with that or act on that. And there are many things, that are many miracles that happen, that one should not underestimate the breaking of a dream aspect. Okay, there is, to incarnate a dream, sometimes you have to break the dream. Yeah, and a goal for when I was in high school, I did my first movie as director and screenwriter. You write the screenplay, you take all the pictures, you paint how the frames would look like, then you go on the set, and then you begin filming. And when you begin filming, a good idea would be to toss away everything and work with what is. This is also the Saturn Neptune, okay? You have to work with what is. And then you can incarnate wonderful things, but it's not going to be like what you had in your head, which a lot of creators are dealing with. So this is an aspect that can bring a reality check to certain addiction. Okay, addictions might have implications that are also mythical, like being exposed as an intelligence agent. Okay, for example. Okay, for example, but someone whose natural flow is to be whistleblower. Okay, and also if there were certain hidden patterns, hidden Saturnian patterns or karmatic, if you are the role of karma in someone's life, this might play out in a way where you just, you're the Saturn person, you bring the certain karma upon that Neptune, which is both the incarnation of their wildest dreams in a way, being supported, being seen, being heard, being even advocated, for what the situation, what came about, but it's also like being exposed, accountability, no longer being able to hide under a facade. But there is also the deep desire to be exposed when it comes to whistleblowing, which is basically how it's possible. When it comes to building something creative together, yes, there is a play on who is the visionary. And this can really bring people into situations where one good person can think, I'm the visionary, I'm the dream, you're the builder. And it's like, do you even know who you're talking to? Because the Saturn, everybody has a Neptune. Everybody has a Neptune. And a natal chart would put our Saturn to incarnate our Neptune. Okay? And both delays and fears, but also to incarnate our Neptune. And so when you dissolve someone's fear to incarnate something, you're not in control of the vision. Neither is the builder, because they have surrendered what they are themselves building. This is what happens when you co-create with people. In the conjunction, because the energies blend so well, there is a tendency to internalize a lot of what is of the other. And then you have to distinguish, or you get into a weird situation, like you've created something, or you say something, you're like, I was so scared for not to say the name of the person that now when I want to share what ideas that were inspiration or that I build up upon, I also cannot give credit because of this same duality where I was not allowed to speak. okay, because of the Saturn, because of the restriction. And then there is Neptune, which can also be anonymity, okay? And so this can create for really, really complex situations. It is both the breaking of a dream and it is also the building of a dream. With Neptune involved, there is always a sense of surrender of something. You're not in total control. You're not in total control. And all the people in that equation are not in control of the outcome. This is Neptune. Okay, you just have to, you just have to surrender it. Then there is the sextile. And so when you have, let's say, Saturn conjunct Pluto, as I talked about in the previous video, then what you have basically Saturn sextiling Neptune. And this is where the resort from the power play that happens with the innate, intimate, fated, and a karmatic exposure to the Pluto-Neptune conjunction, okay, is going to the era of a dream, a long journey, a creative force, okay? And there again, there is surrender as to for this creation. Now it's a bit more interesting because for somebody who is the Saturn in this equation, okay, is, yeah, you know, if in the surrender you found your power with the previous one, now it is a little bit of a change of the chicken and the egg here, because you lose your power and then what can you do? You create. But it's not creation that you necessarily find your power through. It puts you back into the situation where you're still trying to establish for your power and you got your creative forces. But it definitely forces you to create. And for the Pluto person, okay, this is bringing, this is somebody making a movie out of your traumas because they have been affected by it. And so there can be the tendency to, again, to control, which gets the worst out of Saturn, because with Pluto, it requires you to go a bit more on the surrendering things rather than try to control for this Saturn person, okay? And for the Saturn person, it absolves, okay, it's getting into the authentic part of you and tending to your fears. So now you are creating and you just surrender as you create. So you give up power and control when you are being creative, and to allow for the dream to incarnate. This is not so much the breaking of the dream as the building of a dream. And yet this is where the Saturn person and the Pluto person escape too. Whether it is, oh, well, in the dream, we are both okay. Or in the dream, we can find the power. But there will still be this power relation thing, even in the dream. So you think about the screenwriter and the director, kind of like, oh, let's make a movie together. This is, we agree on the vision, we agree on this, we agree on that. And then there is still the innate power issue, okay, that got you to this situation to begin with. While things are easier at the Neptune era, it's easier to surrender. It's easier to find beauty in surrender. There's also the desire to find your power, and it's not always found in surrender. So there is this tension that we see between Neptune and Pluto, where the harmony here can be a bit like the false light, but it can eventually be genuine, okay? Because it's like, oh, this is where I deal with all these things that come from the Pluto. And for the Pluto, for having such deep karma, it can actually take them further into manifesting their dreams, because now they have real substance to work with. They can't escape their trauma, now they have to create. Okay, so if Saturn can't escape their fears, now they have to create. Pluto can't escape their traumas, now they have to create. And Saturn brings an even deeper. So if you thought, okay, I'm tackling this, Saturn brings, well, the rabbit hole is a bit deeper. And with Saturn, it's the same. With Saturn, you're like, okay, I'm going to, I know what to do. I'm going to dedicate time to go more authentic, more this, more that. And Pluto comes up with, well, you've been looking for authenticity there. Well, here's another a deeper and deeper place where you could be more authentic. Okay, so there's still the power issue for the conjunction. It's difficult, but Neptune brings in the outlet, the creative outlet, where it is true the vision that you come about to hopefully mitigate and grow with the conjunction. Okay, very fated aspects, long duration. Don't, if you have wandered into such an aspect, know that it has long duration. It has Neptune duration. It's the longest duration. Okay, so you can separate, you can end the connection, still the psychic implication of this connection, you still process them through. Okay, this is where you could say, okay, let's take a break, take a this, take a that, and you still find you're synchronizing for some people even years after. Same with the conjunction, those are Neptune times. It doesn't mean that you should stay physically or not, okay, supposed to be staying, but definitely don't expect this to dissolve within a day or two. Okay, this is, and usually there are transits, just as I said in my Pluto Saturn, there are transits that activate this. Okay, for example, if you're in your Pluto square, you're also in your Neptune square. If you have Saturn maturation and Saturn is conjuncting, let's say, Neptune, you also have aspect with Pluto. So that is triggered, and so on and so forth. Now let's talk about the square. Saturn square Neptune. This is where, here for Saturn to square Neptune, it would very likely trine Pluto. And this is where, again, we get this intricate issue, because you have either, yes, if you have one hard aspect and you have one mitigating aspect, immediately you understand that you could use the easy aspect to escape the hard aspect, and that could both allow you to grow and undermine your growth at the same time. So whereas the dissociation serves you, whereas where the dissociation keeps you in situation where you need to actually grow from, or get sober from. The square with Saturn is, again, this breaking of something that is abstract or malleable. Something you didn't think can be broken because it's so abstract gets broken, and you don't even understand what it is because it's Neptune. And so that is an absolute crisis. It can be a bonds crisis. It can be a liquidation of assets crisis. Due to certain addictions, okay? It can be really devastating. To put it simply, it can be very, very devastating. And on the other hand, this aspect with Pluto might allow for you to grow more harmoniously from this, but definitely there can be loss. There can be loss of a father with a hard aspect, okay? You might have met each other around a loss of a father, a loss of a teacher that was kind of strict with you, okay? Because Saturn is about the rules. It's not about Jupiter, okay? Jupiter father figures are more like the expansive, the inspirational. Saturn is, this is life and you have to deal with it, okay? This is life. You want to be strong, then Saturn would teach you what life really is and would want you to grow resilient. But Saturn might also do it about rest, okay? This is what happens when you don't rest at work. You get sick and you can't get out of your bed for half a year, okay? So that is the way Saturn would teach you. It's a bit of tough love, yes? So with the hard aspect, the Saturn figure is meeting the Neptunian with crisis point, and that can be a very real crisis point. Okay, think about the artist that meets the editor again, and here the artist meets the editor, where you have a giant dream and you went as much as you can to manifest as big as you can, and then Saturn comes in. It's like, yeah, we're gonna take that, and that part, and we're gonna leave the rest. And you're like, but the whole vision is lost. And Neptune is right, and Saturn is right. So, on a personal level, you understand when outer planets are involved, you are working on intergenerational themes, but you're also working for humanity at large. Okay, especially with Neptune, because Neptune is the giant planet. Okay, it's the mythical planet. Issues of addiction, being saved, codependency can definitely arise, but the Saturn person could be as codependent as the Neptune, which is important to remember, okay, because that can be a little bit of a projection issue. You could project certain limitations or perceived fears upon each other, or even perceived addictions upon each other. So that can definitely one of the situations where one person who is still dealing with dissociation is projecting that dissociation on the other person, whichever you are, the Neptune or the Saturn. Okay, so this is where you have to remember that nobody has the sovereignty over your identity or over you to tell you what your mental state is, even if that's a doctor. Nobody has that sovereignty. It is you that need to be happy with your life, okay? Saturn may bring in responsibility where it is very difficult or even impossible for the Neptune to meet, because the square means that both sides have truth to tell. Okay, there's the truth of Saturn, this is the rules, this is the structure, and the truth of Neptune. So, well, how many people died with this structure? Couldn't we like re-engineer that shit? And that is the time where social movements arise, the break-in and the starting of communist regimes, okay, especially about the common good. Where does the common good meet the structure, or the government structure, or the bonds structure, or the bones structure, which is also true. And then there is that mitigation with Pluto. Okay, so Pluto is about evolving, and this is where Saturn can say, okay, well, if I go with this dogma, I break the dreamers, then I need to evolve my structure. Okay, but you still are in the tension with the dreamers all the time. So that's something to keep in mind. Then we have the trine, Saturn trine Neptune, which would mean it is very likely opposing Pluto, either squaring or opposing Pluto. And this is where you're good, you're spiritually fantastic together, and then there's a power struggle that is very tough. Okay, if I if I think about the Corvanaut, okay, Corvanaut, but the Frizzes, the famous movie and story and so on, they made movies together, they made a book together and so on. But then when it comes to the power relations, when it comes to how society perceives that. Are you a friend with the criminal? Okay, and so on and so forth. So it got the backlash. That was still the Pluto Saturn. Okay, and political even with Pluto. So political backlash, that everything backlash, but there was something creative that came about. So this is where very much like very much like the sextile, where you have hard aspect with Pluto but harmonious with Neptune, there is an issue of power, politics, hidden politics, Pluto, hidden wealth. Okay, there was also exchange of, I give you a private jet flight, you give me a story, maybe other things, and so on, taboo topics. And there is the beautiful movie, the beautiful dream. So those are, again, relationships that can be very well known because Pluto and Neptune are dealing with themes of the world at large. Okay, it's not you and the other person when it comes to Pluto Neptune. Never you and the other person alone. And this is how you should deal with that, even when you're doing personal astrology. This is also how you know what you came here to bring. Okay, you know what you came here to bring. So Pluto trine Neptune, Saturn trine Neptune, it's easier for you to create the movie, the dream, the book, the thesis, the fantasy. Okay, you are the fantasy. There is a mythical interest in both of you. Okay, because you are the fantasy. And you might be escaping, okay, to that fantasy, especially if both of you are escaping a Pluto square Saturn. Let's say it's your composite, and it's a Pluto square Saturn composite, then or it is in the synastry itself, and each one of you, okay, like Van Houten de Vries and Peter de Vries, had Pluto hard aspect in Saturn. It was triggered, and they were the same age, the Saturn return, I believe it was. And then they kind of escaped into a mutual, okay, how to say it, folie à deux, which is now become mythical. And now there's the Neptune time backlash, but also Neptune time glory, okay, of it. It's those intricate relations. And this is very likely what you should do with that. You very likely should, very much like any of the Neptune aspects or of the Neptune sextile, okay, you're very much likely to create together or apart, and this is what you should do. You should create. You came here to create something and to show this intricacy in a Neptunian form. So that can be mass media, that can be poetry, that can be stories, paintings that have certain mythical quality to them. Okay, and there is a surrendering of what the outcome is for both of you. It's not going to provide a total escape from the hard aspect with Pluto, but you still have to change structures in your life. Okay, this is what it means. You still have to change structures in your life to accommodate for this dream. But it's giving you the why. Okay, why are you doing that? Why are you struggling so hard? Why are you going through this deep existential crisis, a change from Yesod, okay, change from the core, literally, core, not literally, but why you're going through this is because there's a dream incarnating here. So it's holding this tension, okay? Then you ask about the Saturn-Neptune opposition, which would be, at any case, trine in Pluto. And Saturn-Neptune opposition, I have to admit, I didn't run into yes, a lot of this. That would have to know a person with Saturn in Cancer, or that they would have Saturn in Taurus in front of my Saturn, in front of my Pluto, no, in front of my Neptune. They would have to have Saturn in Cancer or Neptune in Taurus, which we didn't have. So that would mean that I don't know, to tell you from experience. It's definitely a time where everything Saturn, structure, authority, karma, is right in front of you. And the breakage comes not from a dual or a tension, or even the blending of intimacy, okay? It actually comes from, how should I say it? Somebody right in front of you is a fog. Okay, you're standing in front of a fog, and this is the Neptunian person. So while you come and try to take responsibility, you're dealing with the fog. So some of you who would say, oh, my partner is gaslighting. No matter how much I try to take responsibility, I'm still dealing with a crook. And whether they may or may not be a crook, but you're definitely dealing with the fog, that you will try all of your Saturnian ways to take responsibility, to grow up, to this, to that, only to learn that there is a loss in front of you. But then it could also take the form of, after the loss and after the crisis, you meet the humility in another person, or you mature up to see what the place that they were addict, and that's why they couldn't provide, and so on and so forth. Again, all Saturn issues have to do with father figures involved in some way. Neptune is that which is missing. Okay, so this is the missing, the role of the missing, the very present in its absence. And with Saturn, it can be a father that was a spy. It can be a father that had mythical qualities. It can simply be a missing father, but usually there's some reason they went missing. Okay, there's just something additional to his missing information about the father. It can be missing information about the lineage, okay, or about the family karma, what your lineage is. There can be confusion about all these things. What were my relations with my father? Could be all these questions. Anything that combines Neptune and Saturn, even Neptune in Saturn sign, like Neptune in Aquarius and Neptune in Capricorn, or now Saturn in Pisces, is giving father issues to do with grief, missing, but also mythicism. Could have a highly mythical father figure that is a part of your synastry. Okay, so you want to tend to your lineages when it's Saturn things, and you're gonna find them both important. And with Neptune, there's something missing. There's something foggy around the whole issue. There can be a situation where one could be unconsciously projecting father figure on another. This is more with Pluto, but this is also with Neptune, because Neptune gives us mythical quality to a person that can come from a psychological wound of missing father or grieving father figure. In this regard, and Neptune is also to do with eros and romance. So they can be a breaking of a fantasy or the incarnation of a fantasy around this, that that what you receive from here is more important than if it is real or not. And then there is the need for something, for the fantasy to be real, which is yet another type of interaction where, depending on the relation with Neptune and Pluto, you could, in those rare cases where Saturn is sextile in Pluto, is sextile in Neptune and trining Pluto, you might actually get that type of interaction. But in our days, for the people that are born now, it would be conjuncting Uranus. Mostly, unless it is Alice is Scorpio. Yeah. So that is a possibility. Okay, it is a possibility that when Saturn is in harmony with Neptune and Pluto, you could get like the complete false light incarnation, or alternatively, you could get something that is both imaginary and real. Okay? You want to think about, I don't know, Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny kissing in the Golden Globe and then stuff like that. So kind of like the fantasy romance kind of became something that is celebrated in real life, that is both unreal and a little bit of real as well. So people kind of got their glory in Neptune times, definitely Neptune times since the X-Files. So that's something to keep in mind. There's the breaking of a dream, but it's actually true incarnation of a dream as well. And it has various levels of intricacy and complexity. Okay? If you think about the Corvan Out, which was the story about a person who solves crime, bring into jail a criminal, and then they have whatever, some sort of an affair together and deep friendship. And you think about the story time, the movie, the good for the article, you think about the fact there was actually such friendship. and so the fake was also the real. Okay, the movie was also the reality. This is also happening with Saturn, Neptune. Okay, you are walking in your dreams with all the intricacy that it entails. It's both isn't Kansas anymore and is. Okay, and you also have points of interferences. For those of you who experience Alice in Wonderland programming, you could change for what the fairy tale is as dealing with the program. You get the power of story and storytelling, and okay, but beginning to interfere, beginning to tell for your own story, which can be a form of finding your power. So yes, that's the Neptune Saturn. I hope that you find it useful. I hope I managed to cover this while not ignoring the dream facets, but also not ignoring the reality check, the losses, the breaking of a dream, where it's not like fantasy, and so on and so forth. So, bye-bye.